Hello, everyone. Let me see that this is working. The slides, I cannot see them. But anyway, let's start by saying how excited I am to be here in front of 2,000 product leaders. The reason that I am so excited is because I love product managers. And do you know why I love product managers? Is because all of you have secret superpowers. In many companies, they can be called in different ways. It's basically the competencies of either business, strategic thinking, analytics, technical ability, customer empathy. But you know what I really love? It's planning and executing. Basically, you ladies get stuff done. And what I've seen, though, in my career is that as people are progressing through their lives and they're evolving in their product careers, they oftentimes are going to be executing flawlessly on all of those skills. But you know what surprises me? Is that sometimes they forget they have those superpowers as they're thinking about how to plan their careers and their lives. So today, I'm going to talk to you about your amazing superpowers and how can you be thinking about them as you're coming up with different questions that you might have in life, like what do I want to do in life, what about my next job, and many other things. So before that, what I will start with is an example of how do we use these product skills to solve for a business. And then I'm going to give you some examples of the tools that I have used for my own career and how I have coached others. As Deb mentioned, she's, by the way, in the board of Intuit, so a really good friend. I work at Intuit. And at Intuit, we are the specialist of financial management software and accounting. We also have grown in mainly Commonwealth and English-speaking countries. And it turns out that one day my manager comes and says, Jimena, you've been doing global expansion in different parts in your life. Why don't you think about what is going to be the next country where we might launch? And you need to figure out with which product, where are we going to go, and how are we going to do it? That seemed like a really daunting task, not only because it meant thinking about a new product, and in that sense, common problems that other companies have, like whatever the competition, where are we going to open offices, how do we hire people, but also because of the space where we are, compliance and fiscal laws really matter. So anything related to partnerships and others were really daunting tasks that we needed to think of. So as always, with my product manager and analytics hat, I thought, well, first of all, let's make a model to think about which country. Turns out that because of many variables, it was Mexico, the first one on the list, which now, as you might have noticed from my accent, I grew up in Mexico, so I really came full circle going back to Mexico, except that this time I had to learn about the Mexican fiscal laws. So the next thing was, okay, what is going to be our vision? How do we think about the super long term? 10 years from now, where do we want to be? And let's start actually planning it backwards so that we don't wait too many years for the launch. In fact, the last time that a country had been launched for QuickBooks had been 6 years before that. So I was like, man, we shouldn't really take that long. Let's think about how to do it faster. So came back to milestones, think about what were going to be the go or no-go decisions, the metrics that we needed to prove, so that little by little we could actually be advancing. And instead of thinking about something very long, start thinking about product market fit faster. So that is how we launched QuickBooks in Mexico, fully in Spanish, and also fully compliant with the Mexican IRS, with customer support in Spanish, with the help of 200 volunteers around the company, that on top learned about all of the Mexican IRS rules just for the launch. And you know in how much time we did it? We did it in 3 months. And the really fun thing is that from that, we started seeing and learning and thinking about growing. So that allowed us to now start growing the office. And Mexico is one of the countries that, whilst we're still testing, is doing the best. And in that sense, by the way, we're now hiring a Mexican country manager. So if you want to go live in Mexico, this could be the job for you. But anyway, the point for that is that if you think about that was a daunting task, right? So how did we think about putting it in little steps? We can actually do the same thing for other things, such as life. Why? Because as this was happening, I had so many people in my team or other people that I had mentored that would come to my office with one question: Jimena, I'm not sure what do I want to do in life. I'm thinking about the next job, but I also need to think about when is the right time to have children. Perhaps some people also might have had aging parents, so they're thinking, how do I think about being close to my parents, the financial stability that I need for that? So all of a sudden, it seemed that all of those questions were almost paralyzing to then think about what is it that I want to do with that amazing life of mine. And interesting, a lot of the answers that I had was that we really need to think about, continue thinking about what we want to do when we grow up. That is actually a photo of me when I was, I think, 5 years old on my first day to school in Mexico. And back in the day, I thought, because I loved machines and pushing buttons, that I wanted to be an elevator operator or a cashier. That's what I knew, so that's what I wanted to do. Then I ended up thinking that I wanted to do ice skating, so I did become a 3-time ice skating national champion of Mexico. But then a really important thing happened. I needed to think about a life decision. Would I quit high school to do ice skating, or would I quit ice skating? I did the latter because I really wanted to continue growing in terms of my academic career. But that decision actually led me to learn more languages, which led me to studying in France, and we'll talk a little bit about that. My point is that it's not only when we are little kids that we should be thinking about our careers, it should be all the time. Why? Because we never stop growing up. That's a really important message. So life can be run like a product roadmap, and if we put now the pieces together related to if you have a big business and you're thinking, what are the steps that I can accomplish? You can actually do the same way. Think about right now, all of you are here because at some point in your careers you said, I want to be a product manager. That's what led you here. But also the reason why you're here is because you're investing in yourselves. Your companies are investing in you, and this is just a stepping stone. This is going to be the beginning of amazing things that you're going to do in your companies, in startups that you start, and other things that you will do. So now what I would love to share with you is some of the tools that I have used for myself and people in my teams, so they start thinking much more about the long term rather than just the next step. Let's start with going from 100 goals to one life vision. That's the phase number 1. And by the way, I'm going to share with you all of these tools that I have used with my teams. In fact, there's a LinkedIn article that I just wrote this morning so that you can have access to those documents and start basically hacking away, and you don't need to build the models for yourselves. But let's actually start by step 1. Step 1 that I usually do with people is, let's start thinking about 100 goals. This is really like brainstorming. It goes from, I want to travel to more countries, to big things like, I want to make sure that my aging parents have good healthcare, so I will need to contribute financially. Many different things. The categories can be anywhere from money to career to life to friends to love. Exploratory phases of what you might want to do with those years that you have. The second part, though, because we're product managers, we go broad and then we go narrow. So what I love is thinking, let's actually categorize those goals. So everyone comes with different categories. Some of them, for instance, were impact, friends, career, and so on. But not just that, then we need to think about timelines, right? Some of them can be, are you going to do that this decade, the next one? Some PMs think about more short-term, middle-term, and long-term. And of course, like with any good product, we think about what is going to be the difficulty. There's going to be things that take a lot of planning and many years to get done. And then there's going to be others that are basically quick wins. And the same thing with impact. What are the things that we must definitely do that we wouldn't want to go living our lives without having done something, versus others like visiting Thailand that would be fun, but perhaps it's going to be okay if we don't make it to that country and instead another. So the next step after you have done all of your categorization is that by the timeline, you can see what are the different things that you want to accomplish in different phases. This is an example of mine. In my 20s, it was really about building my basic skills of strategy, analytics, and thinking about how to work with cross-functional teams. Then in my 30s, it was about thinking, if I really like technology, but I'm in Paris, how do I get to Silicon Valley, and so on. So that's basically something that you can do for yourselves, because really fun is that you can have a vision of who do you want to be in your life and in each one of the phases. In my case, it was thinking about being an executive. Then hopefully afterwards, I'm going to be just like Robin Williams in the Dead Poets Society and teaching a lot of kids to actually follow their dreams. Afterwards, perhaps I'll reinvent myself and continue coaching different entrepreneurs. And never to forget that, of course, I do want to be like Iris Apfel. I love jewelry, I love fashion. So I really hope that at some point in my life, I get a chance to do something much more creative. So we went again from thinking about how do you think about all of the things that you want to do, to putting about different phases, and then having a vision, a true north of what you really want to accomplish. But of course, we wouldn't be product managers if we didn't think about the next steps and the roadmap. So a couple of examples of things that if you now know what are the big things that you want to do in each phase, you might actually have to think about what are the milestones that are going to be on the way. An example, I mentioned that I was a strategy consultant in Paris. I was specialized in technology, but I really wanted to come to Silicon Valley and build that career as a product executive. So I thought, damn it, what am I supposed to do? I need to get a visa first. Then probably I need to get a product role, and then I need to start growing in that career. So this was an example of the very basic milestones that I had for myself, that without them, I was just not going to go anywhere. Two different tools that we actually use at Intuit that help for this type of strategic thinking is, one, leaps of faith. Those are things that you believe to be true, that you think that if they don't happen, the plan is not going to work. And on the other one, the reasons to believe. Those are things that give you confidence that your plan could actually work out. So very briefly, on my case, it was that even though I didn't have a CS degree, companies would hire me as a product manager, that I was going to be able to apply previously learned skills to my new career, and finally, that I was going to be able to get a company that would sponsor my visa. Reasons to believe was, well, I'm pretty good at analytics. I had worked with cross-functional teams. I had even worked with R&D in semiconductors. And I also had seen many foreigners that were working in Silicon Valley. So I was like, OK, it doesn't seem like the craziest plan. So this is what ended up happening, my roadmap. I started as a strategy consultant, and then actually decided to take a bit of a pay cut and a title cut so that I could gain experience that I thought was going to help me in my next steps. I started as a reporter at the MIT Technology Review. I went to school at MIT. Then I did internships at Eventbrite and on Facebook. And finally, Zynga said, we want people that are really good at strategy and business and analytics. You have a PM job. So that was basically the break that I wanted in Silicon Valley. And from then, things continued to evolve. At some point, then I became the director of product and analytics at Meetup. And then I had the fortune of being at OkCupid when we took the company public together with Match for the IPO. Now at Intuit, it's really coming full circle because, as Deb mentioned, I have worked in different countries. So actually leading global expansion was a reason where I could utilize a lot of the things that I had done in the past. But this is just me. Let me also give you an example of a product manager that I was just working with about 3 weeks ago as she was telling me what she wanted to do with her career. In her example, she wanted to go from a PM to a chief marketing officer. So as we went through all of her goals, what I showed her is that I believe that when you're doing career jumps, usually they don't happen in a diagonal. What I mean is that sometimes you need to go horizontal, especially if you're learning different skills, and then you can move up. So the example here is that she works at a large company where she's a PM, and I said, why don't you find if in your company or in your team there might be product marketing manager roles that you can apply to? If you get there, then perhaps if you're growing fast, you can become a senior marketing manager. And then perhaps, because startups usually want to think about growth, and that is a very good mix between product management and product marketing, you might become the head of growth at some cool startup, which could lead to becoming a director. But remember that you might actually have to sacrifice title because growth is just going to be one part of marketing. So if you want to be in charge of all of marketing, you might actually need to take a title cut and then become the head of marketing, which could then lead you back again to growing in title and at some point becoming a CMO. So you basically get the gist. The point is that careers are never linear, and sometimes you have to think about trade-offs in service of that one thing that you're searching to learn and to experience. Of course, as we're thinking about roadmaps and as we're thinking about mini features, think about each job as a product launch, we need to write detailed specs for each step. So this is the example of what she wrote for each one of her values. She said, I'm going to specify what does it mean for me. For example, for learning, that she was going to be able to work on user acquisition funnels. For work-life balance, that she wouldn't have a very long commute. And also she cares about her mom, so she needed to make sure that the company that she would either stay at or would work at would actually have policies that would allow her to take time off if her mom needed her to be there if something happened. So that's an example of how you start writing things. And of course, as a super geeky person, I always write models for anything. So we created a model. I actually chose my partner because one day we met on OkCupid, and he came with a model on how to buy a sofa with different features, and I was like, that guy's a keeper. So anyway, this is a model that I actually have been using it for at least 10 or 12 years, and basically, this one again, you can use it, I put it on LinkedIn, where you write down all of your detailed specs, and then all that you need to do is rank the options that you have versus one another, because we always, sometimes when we think about the future, it becomes almost like we have anxiety, right? But this way, you can combine what you have in terms of qualitative data with quantitative data. And it doesn't mean that this model is going to give you the answer. It just means that it's going to allow you to see different options in different ways in a more analytical way so that you can base your decisions on data as well. So again, that's an example of you don't need to love models as much as I do. You can just think about what are the tools that you have that you already use today so that you can launch features and amazing products so that you can use them in you. Because, of course, if it works for the products you launch, what do you think says the next slide? It obviously is going to work for you. So now let me leave you. Oh, by the way, that's the QR code for the resources. It basically has the LinkedIn article, and then you can just go to the models that you can just copy and start using. I'll have them also at the end. And before we go, I'm going to leave you with 3 takeaways. Number 1, live roadmaps don't follow linear development. Sometimes things are happening on parallel. Sometimes we need to take, as we mentioned in the case of the CMO, regressions in terms of title or pay so that we can accomplish the goals that we have set for our future. What is very important, though, is that just like in business, your true north is what matters. You need to have that ideal vision of where are you heading in the future, but also at each phase, so that then the decisions, you can take them much more with the barometer or measuring what is it that really matters to you and not to someone else. And the final one is that it's okay to launch and fail and learn and pivot. Isn't it true that when we think about products, we would never think about launching something without testing? Or it would be impossible if someone came to us and said, once you launch this thing, it needs to work for sure for the first time. So if we know that to be so true for the products that we work on, why wouldn't it be the same for our lives? We have at least 50 years. We have room to explore. We have room to learn. And we do have room to fail, as long as we continue learning from those mistakes and move on to the next thing. So with that, as we are wrapping up, I'm going to leave you with one of my most favorite quotes that hopefully will give you the meaning of what this whole talk is about. So 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you did not do than by the ones that you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails. Explore, dream, and discover. Thank you.